the book this time. Oh my goodness. So this kind of gives them that space to talk about what they want to talk about. What are your questions? What were you confused by? What are your thoughts? So on and so forth. The next piece in sort of this intro piece is the sharing piece, and this is an opportunity for them actually to share kind of on their own the pieces in the text where they felt that there were big ideas that they found, and specific pieces of evidence in the text to support that big idea in this particular section. So you'll see here what the letter says is, everyone go through and share your best sticky. When they are reading the text, when they come to the circle, they must come not only with something prepared, but they come with their text as well. And the first meeting, they don't need to have anything marked in the book, but for every meeting thereafter, the requirement is they come to the meeting with at least 2 pieces of evidence marked. So if you take a look, this is my Whipping Boy book, and you can see I've marked it up pretty extensively. Actually power is a big theme in Whipping Boy too, so you can see here power. Big thing, self-determination. These were all pieces of places in the text where these things were I was noting these particular things. The kids need to share 1 of their stickies, but they come to the meeting with 2. And the reason is that if somebody shares their sticky, we get a lot of, oh yeah, that was the same place I was going to share. That's why they must have 2, so that they have something else that they can kind of contribute. Here's a little aside. Sometimes, this is especially towards the beginning of the year, you'll have kids that, have forgotten one piece or another. So maybe they've forgotten their book at home, or maybe they forgot to bring their stickies, or their job. So, there's some ways around this I'll tell you briefly before we get back to the letter, sort of how I handle those things. If they have forgotten their book, oftentimes I'll have a spare that they can rent from me for the bargain price of $5 in which case they won't be able to share their sticky. They will have to share it with me at the beginning of lunch, so I make sure that I know that they did read the text critically. So that's that. If they don't have their stickies, then we're sort of bordering on not being prepared to meet. And in that case, the best thing to do is for them to check in with me. Oftentimes what I'll say, especially towards the beginning of the year, at the end of the year I'm less tolerant, but towards the beginning of the year it's more like, okay, well, then at the beginning of lunch, you're going to need to find some places and justify your thinking for me. If they don't come with their job done and they've come with nothing prepared, then really it's just not fair to the rest of the group, because they're here, that the power of the conversation is the power is from the conversation with all of the different thinking that goes on together. And if they're not prepared, really they're sort of taking, but they're not able to bring things to help their colleagues out. So if that's the case, they need to check in with me, and what I will do is have them go work on this letter by themselves at their desks, and they'll have to write their answers out independently, because they won't be able to participate with a group that day. All right, so that's sort of how that situation is handled. Back to the letter. Like I said, they're going to go through and they're going to share their best sticky. After they've done that, that's sort of the intro. Now we move on to the second section of the letter, which is where I ask some questions specifically, things that I wanted them to look at. So for example here, Prince Brad grabs some power back on page 34. How? So when you get a question like this, what happens first thing is everybody turns to page 34, and you sort of silently kind of read and try to find that part in the text, and somebody will say, oh, I found it, I think it's here, and somebody will say, oh, yeah, I have that too. And actually it's funny, because later on in the year, you'll find that when we're up here talking about stickies, they start to see the same things in the text that I saw. And so you'll be like, oh yeah, we already talked about that one here, or, so on and so forth. So one thing you should know is if, my questions, it's something that's already come out in the conversation, it's perfectly fine to kind of skim through that, be like, okay, we've already talked about that. If they are meeting with an adult who is helping to guide the conversation, then you have that latitude. I trust that you're going to help them get the bits out of the book. It is much less important than for me that they're as rigorous. Well, it's structured. when they are answering a question by themselves here, or they're meeting and I'm kind of bouncing between groups, they do read the question, look at it, discuss it, and then they write an answer in the logbook. This is what we were discussing before, that they don't all have to write in order to, this is just sort of a group log, if you will. If you feel that, you know, you're working with them and you've had like a fantastic discussion, I mean, you will have discussions like, they'll be like talking for 10 minutes about this question, and people will be bringing in other bits, and you'll be flipping back and forth in the book, and it's great. If you feel like you've done that and you've beaten the dead horse till it's like way beyond resuscitation, it is fine to, you know, sort of say, okay, we've talked about this enough. We don't need to write anything in the logbook on this one. Let's move on to the next question. Otherwise, you'll find sometimes that like you've spent all this time on here, and then you never get down to sort of the sharing of their own work and what they took out of the book. So use your judgment. It's fine, like I said, if you want to adjust the actual writing portion of this assignment. You'll find with like, you know, I try to keep the questions to something like three to four, you know, when it's a book where there's just like so much I'm so excited about and there's so much I want them to see, then you'll see that I like go squeeze it to 5 questions or so on and so forth. But again, use your discretion in terms of pacing. All right, after you've discussed and you've jotted some notes, then really the last section here in the letter is really, okay, it's kind of a reminder of what they're going to do next time, continue to read, etc., marking stickies. And now we move on to their jobs. Now, like I said, everybody's going to come with something prepared. They've looked at the section with a different slant. And so you'll have one person that's going to be a summarizer, summarizing the section. Somebody else is going to be asking questions about the section. Word Wizard is going to be teaching some vocabulary and explaining why particular words are important to the big ideas. Connector connects big ideas to other things in life or other texts that have had similar kind of big ideas in order to better understand these things more deeply. Passage Picker picks a powerful passage that relates to big ideas. Artful Artist picks a powerful scene and represents that visually. And then describes it in a brief write-up. So everybody has, like I said, this sort of different thing they're going to come and discuss. I say, you know, 5 to 6 minutes per person. It's probably going to be less than that, particularly if the conversation earlier was really weighty. So then really all you do is sort of work through, if you find, and this happens a lot, you're running short on time, it's totally fine to be just like, okay, you know, discussion director, we've talked about this section so much, share your best question, or Word Wizard, share your best 2 words instead of sharing all 5, as a way to sort of gain some more time and not overkill with everything. They know that even if they don't share the part of your job that you're most proud of or something like that, if they don't get to sharing all of their job, they know that I read and score all of the jobs. So it's not critical that the meeting time is used for that to get through everybody on that. Once they're done and they've all shared, then all you sort of do is pack everything up and you stick it inside the binder, inside the folder. Their jobs go there too. And they know where rubrics are kept in the classroom. We looked at this a minute ago, but I'll pull another one out here. Okay, this is a class. This is you'll get this a lot. So then they just sort of anonymously fill out for me kind of how the meeting went. And we had thinking that connected to big ideas. There was some fooling around. Yes, okay. You can see this is October, so. You know, as the year goes on, hopefully there's less and less of that, and that's another reason why you're so helpful. I find that I can get to 2 book groups, bounce back and forth between 2, but it's really impossible for me to try to work that 3rd group in. So having you there is really, really valuable. It's also a heck of a lot of fun for the kids to have sort of an expert reader kind of share their own thinking. So your job, yes, is to kind of help keep the conversation moving, help you balance conversation so everybody's having a chance to participate, etc., etc. But it's also really to share sort of your own thinking. My hope is, like, I have parents that come in and they're like, oh my gosh, that was such a great book. Hopefully you really enjoyed this opportunity to read a book with your kid and share this great literature. All right, please let me know if you have any questions. Again, we thank you so much and hope you have a wonderful time with us.